Okay, it looks like it's right at 11 o'clock on the dot, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. Send this closed captioning message one more time. You are all automatically muted upon entry. You'll need to use the chat box in order to send messages or ask questions. The chat box defaults to all panelists, so if you would like your fellow attendees to also see your question or comment, be sure to select attendees and panelists from the drop-down menu. If you don't see a chat box, you may need to put your mouse over the bottom or the side of your screen to get that information. If you are running into technical difficulties, please feel free to send me an email. Just a reminder, all of our webinar sessions are recorded and posted on our YouTube channel for future viewing. And I'm going to go ahead and get started so that we can give as much time as possible to Jen. Thank you for being here for our Kernel of Knowledge series. For those of you that aren't familiar with the National Network of Libraries of Medicine or the Greater Midwest Regional Office, my office serves a 10-state area, and we are housed here at the University of Iowa. My name is Bobby Newman, and I'm the Community Engagement and Outreach Specialist for this office. I just connect with public libraries in our 10-state area and across the nation. For those of you who are interested in continuing education credit, this webinar will provide 1 CE credit from the Medical Library Association, and I will send that evaluation link out in about a week when I send out the link to the YouTube posting. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jen Carson. She is a yoga teacher, a positional therapist, as well as the director of the L.P. Fisher Public Library in Woodstock, New Brunswick, Canada. She's also the author of Get Your Community Moving, Physical Literacy Programs for All Ages from ALA, and Yoga and Meditation in the Library, a practical guide for librarians from Roman and Littlefield. She is the creator of yogainthelibrary.com, and you can follow her adventures on jencarson.com. And Jen, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and hand it over to you now.
Okay, thank you. Sounds good. Everybody can see me. I'm just going to go and share my screen, so you should be able to see my slide presentation. Okay, so I won't be able to see your comments, but you guys can see my slide presentation now. So this is called Taking Care of Us, and it's a webinar about ergonomics and advice for library staff. Any of us that work in libraries, public, academic, probably have the tendency to feel some compassion fatigue and feel burnt out sometimes and take our jobs home with us even when we don't necessarily want to. So just a little bit of background, who I am. Bobby did a good job of introducing me, but I'll just talk a little bit more. I got interested in physical literacy, so I'm a physical literacy researcher, and I got interested in that actually because I used to work in the school system before I became a full-fledged librarian. I worked in libraries, and then I sort of bounced back and forth between the school system and museums as well. And a lot of the children that I were working with had behavioral problems. I was an autism support worker, and as well as an intervention worker. And when I say behavioral support problems, you know, they were seen as problems by the staff at the schools because they couldn't sit still or they couldn't conform to the way that society says we're supposed to act. But I didn't really see those as problems. I saw them as sort of like interesting personality traits. And I felt like every sort of behavior communicates a need. And so for me, I was trying to always figure out what was going on with the students, that they had these expressed needs, and they were just expressing them in ways that we didn't necessarily recognize because they weren't familiar to us. And so I got really interested in physical literacy and trying to understand how people express themselves kinetically. Because not everyone has the verbal acuity to necessarily say when they feel upset. They may feel upset, but they don't necessarily have the ability to just sort of say, hey, I need help, you know, or they don't want to, but often that will come out in a physical way. And so that's where I kind of started down the rabbit hole of figuring that out. And I did my yoga teacher training first for children because I wanted to figure out how I could use yoga and other physical forms to help these kids sort of not conform to the school system, but they did have to, sort of exist within it, and the system wasn't going to change for them, and they had to sort of learn techniques and skills so they could exist within it. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's just the way it was. And so the reason I'm telling you all this is to give you a larger context of what I now do in libraries, because I'm sure some of you feel like really frustrated with your workplaces and feeling also that all the time you're being told that you should be doing self-care and taking care of yourself and doing yoga and doing meditation and taking your lunch breaks and blah, 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 but you don't feel like the system is actually supporting you. And the reality is, for the most part, it's not. For the most part, the systems are set up to run libraries and to move books and to fill program seats, and sort of taking care of staff is like way on the back burner. And so I'm going to talk about that, about how you can lobby for better treatment at work, but I'm also going to talk about our own responsibilities to take care of ourselves when we can't change the system and we feel stuck, because that is the reality for a lot of us. So first, I'm going to just give a little short background on what physical literacy is, because some of you might not be familiar with the term. Some of you have attended my webinars before or read my books, and so you know that this is like my favorite thing in the world. But some of you are like, what's physical literacy? So my definition of physical literacy is it's the motivation, ability, confidence, and understanding to move the body throughout the life course as is appropriate to each person's capacity. The development of fundamental movement skills that they permit a person to move with confidence and control in a wide range of actions. So throwing, skipping, balancing, and different environments like on snow, grass, water, in the air, on ice. And it also applies to people with disabilities and exceptionalities. And that's really important for me. So Margaret Whitehead came up with the definition of physical literacy, probably about 20 years ago now. But there wasn't necessarily at that time a real focus on how we develop it to each person's capacity. So just because someone has a different body than what we consider a normal body doesn't necessarily mean that they're not incredibly physically literate. So for example, someone in a wheelchair that plays wheelchair basketball would have incredible physical literacy skills to do with basketball that I wouldn't have, because I can't dribble or like run and chew gum at the same time, let alone wheel a wheelchair and play basketball at the same time. So they have an incredibly high skill set in that area that I don't possess as a more able-bodied person. And so it was really important to me to define physical literacy so that it incorporates everyone in all bodies, and also to think about how our physical literacy has to be adaptable. So think about physical literacy in the same way that you would think about regular textual literacy. They're building blocks. So in order to understand, reading a book full of text, you also have to understand, phonics and recognize letters and be able to string letters together and then string sentences together to make an entire word. So it's the same thing when you look at physical literacy. In order to do one large gross motor skill motion, you have to string together a lot of little ones as well. And those things will change depending on the environment. So that's why I say, like if you think about it, how you walk on snow versus how you walk in a grassy field versus how you wade through water at the beach versus how you walk on a slippery, icy sidewalk or run around in the sand. Those are radically different ways of interpreting the environment and changing. So physical literacy is also how you interact with your environment and use your physical skills. So being able to perform that same action in different environments is just as important as performing the action itself. So just to give you some examples of some components of physical literacy up on the slide here. So I also want you to think about the emotional component of physical literacy. So you can't have an emotion without motion. So when you feel happy, your face smiles, your body physiology changes. When you feel frustrated, or angry or scared, cortisol floods through your system and you grimace or you like grind your teeth or whatever. So being able to express those emotions safely through movement is a way to sort of get the emotions out of our body and also ground us in our bodies. And it also gives us greater compassion for ourselves and others because mirror neurons are at play here. And then there's the component of interoception. So when we become aware of our body's processes. So I want you to just take a moment right now and just notice like where you are. So for me, I'm standing at my standing desk in my office. I can feel my feet planted on the ground at like a slight, not quite 45-degree angle. I can feel the clothes on my skin. I can feel like my teeth and my tongue and my mouth. I can feel my glasses sitting on my face and my headset. And just like be aware, you can maybe feel your breathing as your like nose takes in oxygen and maybe your mouth or your nose exhales oxygen. Maybe you're hungry and your belly's kind of grumbly. Whatever's going on, just bringing some awareness to what's happening to your internal state. So that's interoception. And then proprioception is some awareness of how your body moves in time and space. So being aware of like what's under the ground, or, you know, underneath you, or what's next to you, or who is next to you, or how the air feels on your skin, or whether you're cold or you're hot. And like, you know, right now it's snowing like crazy outside here in New Brunswick. We're supposed to get like a foot of snow today. So just being aware of how you navigate your environment. You're going to wear different clothes in a foot of snow than you are when it's really hot out and you're going to the beach. Temporal awareness is your awareness of your time and your daily rhythms and sleep, hunger cues and all that sort of stuff, and allows you to make predictions. Like, okay, I know if I eat now, then in this period of time, I'm probably going to be hungry because I need to eat every 4 hours. For me, that's like how often I need to eat, maybe even 3 hours. Or also being aware, like if I throw this ball right now, it's going to take this long to land in that spot. And that's a skill. We don't necessarily think about that. But if you watch a baby try, or a small child try to like throw something, they don't necessarily understand how long it takes to get from point A to point B. And sometimes adults don't either. Okay, so our vestibular system balance is really important. And kids today are really struggling with balance. We have a really high incidence of kids even just falling out of chairs at school because they don't have a good proprioception or vestibular system developed because they spend so much time being sedentary. Babies are put in, like, you know, those car seat carriers and carried around all the time. And they don't have a chance to push against things in their environment and walk on their own legs and crawl around. And so they're losing muscle mass and they're not developing strong cores, and they're also not testing their vestibular system. So if you watch little kids, they naturally love to spin. Like my 7-year-old the other day was just spinning himself crazy in my living room and then falling over and laughing and then getting up and doing it again. And that's how they test out their vestibular system and work on their balance skills. And they love, you know, like spinning on tire swings and things like that. But a lot of playgrounds have taken those away because they're seen as risky. You know, it's rare to come across a playground now where you'll see one of those like those wheel things that go around. I can't remember what those are called, but you know, they're like a little spinny thing that you stand on, and then of course the kids all push it and you go really fast and then everyone flies off because they're considered those are considered dangerous as well. But they really test your vestibular system as well as balance beams or monkey bars or things like that. And then taking risks as well. And again, that's to your capacity. So you're going to take different kinds of risks based on what your body can do. But getting comfortable with uncertainty, like going in the water when you don't know how to swim, and then teaching yourself some basic swimming skills or taking lessons, and then learning and building up the confidence to be able to do those things. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about, like, I'll just use one little example of how physical literacy can affect your entire life course. So for example, in infancy, you learn how to grasp things. I'm going to just switch over. So you guys, I'm going to close the slide presentation. Can you still see me, like my physical self as well as the screen? Bobby, can you tell me, can people still see my body? Oh,
yep,
so you can still, so I can keep the slides up and you guys can still see me on the side?
Yeah, you're small and the slides are big.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. I just wanted you to be able to see what I was talking about. So, like I have a little ball here. So in infancy, when you start grasping a ball, it's like this, and it's a whole hand palm grasp. And so you start kind of like rubbing your arm along the floor and trying to pick things up like this. And you'll watch babies and they do that. It's super cute. And they try to grab stuff. And so what happens is that that's a fairly major gross motor skill, is learning how to close your hand like this. And then as babies start getting older, they learn a pincer grip, okay? And so they learn how to pick up smaller and smaller items, and they develop strength in their thumb and their first finger to be able to hold things with more accuracy. And so if you think about that, a lot of kids are entering school and they're still holding pencils like this. Okay, and they're trying to draw and they're trying to write like this or like this, okay, because they have not developed the pincer skills to be able to hold on to a pencil like that. And so they're already starting kindergarten or grade 1 or preschool without the skills to be able to do that. And so they end up getting behind. And so what happens is that it has long-term ramifications, because if they're taking a longer time to write and taking a longer time to form their letters, their literacy skills fall behind. And then, they're not at the place where they're supposed to be. And then they also get discouraged because they have a harder time drawing and they feel like their artwork isn't as good as their peers. And so they stop drawing because they're embarrassed by it, or they feel like they're not good at writing. They're not good writers, and so they don't do it, et cetera, et cetera. So using the ball example again, as I have here on the chart. So in childhood, you learn how to kind of throw a ball, sort of, you do that floppy sort of overhand throw. That's how you or you do an underhand roll, right, when you're first learning. And then in middle childhood, you start throwing with more precision. And also you start learning to wind up and throw with the whole shoulder girdle, pushing forward, and a full extension. You guys can't see my legs, but I'm stepping back and I'm rotating with my full body, I'm lifting off with my back foot, and I'm throwing forward. So that's a full overhand proper throw, okay, as opposed to the underhand this, or just the little that. Okay, and so hopefully by the time you reach young adulthood, you've mastered this skill pretty well to the point that you can play quite a few sports like baseball, football, frisbee, any kind of sport, maybe even bowling, that you can master a bunch of different ways to throw balls. What happens though is that people, and especially girls, research has shown, that don't master this skill by the time they get to early adulthood, and so they just stop doing it. So I don't know how many of you guys have been accused of or feel like you throw like a girl. Sorry for the gendered term, but that's sort of the insult that gets lobbed around. And you just throw like this, which is the girl throw, and then you just stop throwing because you think you're bad at it, or you don't want people to make fun of you, or you feel like you're too old to learn, and so you feel like you're never going to get better at it. And so you don't challenge yourself to learn juggling or baseball or throw a football around with your kids because you feel like you're not good at it. And the same thing goes with any sport or any activity like that. If you never learn how to swim or be comfortable around the water, there's so many other activities you don't do because of that fear, or because of that feeling of lack of confidence in your abilities. So, you're not going to go out on a boat. You're probably not going to go water skiing. You're, not going to go swimming. You're not going to play any sort of water sports or even necessarily be comfortable around water. And so it's important to think about how those little fundamental skills we learn when we're younger translate into our literacy skills for the rest of our life. But the good news is that it's never too late to learn those skills. And so that's what we're going to talk about, is how do we apply these physical literacy skills that I'm talking about at work. So I want to talk about mindful ergonomics. So that was a little bit what the kernel I was planting, or seed I was planting earlier, when I said, I want you to be aware of your office space. And so right now I'm at a standing desk. It's on hydraulics, but in a minute I'm going to pump it down so I can sit with you guys, because I'm assuming most of you are sitting. But I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with our bodies. So I'm going to just lower this down just enough so you can see my torso. Bobby, you tell me if you guys can see my torso pretty well.
Yeah, I can see about down to a little past your waist.
You got I wore a vest today on purpose, so you would see like my vest. Okay.
Yep.
Everyone can see my vest. Okay. So I'm going to take my headset off just so it's not in the way, but hopefully you guys can hear me just fine. Okay. And I should be able to hear you, though not quite as well. Okay. So I'm taking this off. Can Bobby tell me if you can hear me good?
Yep. We can hear you great.
Awesome. You guys are a little tinny, but as long as you can hear me, that's all that matters. Okay. So I want you to think about your torso. And so I'm talking about from your pelvis all the way up to your shoulders. And so Usually, so like 80% of people in North America have back problems, and most of our back problems stem from issues with our pelvis and issues with our shoulder girdle. Okay, so I'm not going to get too much into anatomy with you guys today, but I want to give you a foundation of knowledge so that you can explore this further yourself. So something I do is called integrated positional therapy. I learned it from Lee Albert. He has a great book called Live Pain Free by Lee Albert. You can also take his physical integrated positional therapy classes. He teaches them all over the US. They're great. So this is not something I made up. It came from good sources. Okay, so I want you to think about your pelvis right now. Okay, so if you're standing, you can stand up with me. If you're sitting, you can still do this sitting. But I'm just going to turn sideways so you can see my pelvis. Okay, so for a lot of us, we either have an anterior or a posterior tilt. So we're a little bit like our bum is tucked and our hips are a little bit forward, like a cowboy sway sort of thing. Or we've got our bum out like a Kim Kardashian sort of bum out sort of look. Okay, and so what happens with this is we end up getting lordosis or kyphosis. So lordosis is like a sway back, and then kyphosis is the rounding at the top part of the back and the tucking of the pelvis like this. Okay, and so one thing I want you to work on, whether you're sitting or standing, is I want you to pull your belly button in just a little bit. I don't want you to hold your breath. I just want you to do like a little tilt. So not way out here and not way here, but just in the middle. Okay, so that will align everything in your lumbar and thoracic spine here. Okay, and then the other thing we're going to talk about is our muscles in our chest and our back. So I have a TerraBand here, and I can't see the chat box, so I won't be able to see what your guys' answers are, but so you don't have to say them out loud. But I want you to think to yourself whether a stretched out muscle is tight and short or long, okay? So think to yourself, if my muscle is stretched, if I'm stretching my muscle, is it short and tight or is it long? Okay, so stretched muscle, short or long, okay? So I'll give you a second to think about that. And then I'm going to tell you that it's a trick question because the reality is that both of them are tight. They're just tight in different ways. So I have a TerraBand here. So if this is my muscle, okay, and what happens when I stretch out my long muscle, okay? My muscle is long. Look at my TerraBand, okay? It's really tight. So if I'm stretching that muscle out the long way, it's really, 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 really tight. So a short muscle that's tightened is short and tight, and a long muscle that's tightened is tight. Okay, so no matter what, we're tight. And so my job here is to teach you how to not be so tight. Okay, so what happens is the front side of the body gets shortened. So our muscles here, because we're forward bending all the time like this, so we're sitting at our desks, or we're playing on our phones, or we're just walking around with our librarian schlumps, okay, is we're doing this all the time. So these muscles on the front side of the body get really short. So your pec major, so you have a muscle that runs from your sternum here to, there's an insertion point out here by your bicep and your deltoid. So it runs across here. It's a superficial muscle that's thin, but it gets really tight and it pulls down like this. Then you have another muscle in here, okay, that's your pec minor. It's that one that's on by your bra strap that bubbles out that every woman hates right here. Okay, so that's your pec minor, and that gets really, really tight. If you grab right here, I bet it's really sore. Okay, so that gets tight and it pulls forward. So what happens is all of this pulls forward, and then these muscles on the back side of the body get really long, and they're tight too. So just because they're long and overstretched doesn't mean they're not tight and painful. So these get long and overstretched. These get short and overstretched and tight. Sorry, not overstretched and tight. And so this is tight and this is tight. And so it drives me crazy because people will have lots of back pain and then they go to a physio, no knocking physios if any of you guys are physios, but you know, they'll be like, oh, I'm having so much pain in my upper back. And they'll be like, well, stretch that out. And they give them all these forward bending stretches to do. And I'm like, why are you doing that? You're stretching muscles that are already stretched. So we actually want to slacken off the back muscles, okay? And we want to stretch out the chest muscles here, okay? And then that will give us more room to breathe in our chests and also help our posture. So one little exercise that we can do, I don't have a lot of time to show you guys tons and tons of stuff, but I'm going to show you 2 right now, and you can watch this video later, and I'm going to give you lots of handouts of stuff you can do in your offices. So one thing that you can do to help this whole area make it feel better is you can stand up against a wall, and you can do this with me right now if you want. You can stand up against the wall and put your arm at a 90-degree angle. So see my angle? 90-degree angle. And you're just going to step forward with the foot that's next to the wall. You're just going to step forward about a foot, bend your knee, and lean. Okay? And what's happening is I'll turn so you can see. I'm getting a nice stretch through here. So you're just going to lean forward, and you're going to stretch that out. And then look what's happening in the back. I'm slackening off those muscles. Okay? And then you can turn around and do it on the other side and stretch that out. Okay? Even if you do that in the stacks while you're shelving, just find a bookshelf, put your arm against the bookshelf, step forward and lean, and just stretch this out and slacken this off. Another great thing that you can do, if you have a strap, keep one of like a yoga strap in your office, or a bathrobe tie, or if you do karate, like a karate belt or one of those things. Okay? And you can put it underneath your armpits like this, okay, like a towel, like you're toweling off. And then you're just going to cross it. Again, you can watch this video. You don't have to do it with me right now. I'm just showing you so you know. You have reference. You're going to make an X in front of your body, and then you're going to put your head through the hole and take the X behind your body like this, okay? This one's a little bit short for me because I'm tall, but you're going to grab the ends of the straps, and you're just going to pull your shoulders back, okay? That's going to lift your sternum here in the front of your chest. It's going to slacken off the muscles in the back side of your body, okay? And it's going to open up that chest girdle like I was talking about. And you don't have to do this for very long. It's kind of like wearing a nice, like, weighted book bag, but not one that, like, hurts your low back because it's just on your upper back. And you can just take a moment to put your shoulders back where they're supposed to be, okay? If you have a long enough strap, you can even, like, tie it off and leave it there for a few minutes. And then you're just going to take it off, and then you just leave your shoulders back where they're supposed to be. And just a nice little way to remind yourself to pull your shoulders back. And you can set a little reminder on your phone or put a sticky note on your desk, like, pull those shoulders back. Okay, so let's try some stuff together. So I'm going to lower this a little bit lower, and I'm going to sit with you guys because I'm assuming most of you are sitting. So you can see here, I sit on a ball chair, okay? You can buy them at Costco or, you know, anywhere you can get fitness supplies. This one's by Gaiam. It's about $100. No work, did not pay for it. I had to buy it myself. So I'm going to sit on my bouncy ball chair, but you can sit on whatever chair you happen to have. Okay, I'm just going to raise my desk so you can see me. And I want you to just be really mindful right now of how you're sitting. So your feet should be flat on the floor, okay? And your knees should be at about a 90-degree angle. Okay, so if your feet are dangling or they're not resting on something, that's not good for your low back, okay? And also your thighs should be comfortable on your chair, and you should be able to sit up straight. So you shouldn't be relying on leaning, you know, backwards or forwards too much. You should be able to sit straight. That's why I like this bouncy ball, because it forces me to use my tummy muscles and sit up. But if you don't have a bouncy ball that forces you to sit up straight, the other thing you can do is take a small pillow, not too big. You can buy like a little car pillow at Walmart for a couple bucks, and that works great. Hang on 2 seconds. I'm gonna go get you my pillow that I'll show you. So I also, at my other workstation, have a regular desk chair, and this is my little lumbar pillow. And I just put it behind my back against my regular desk chair, not this one, but I'll just use this as an example. And then it supports my low back, so I sit up nice and straight. Because we don't want to take our butt all the way to the back of the chair, because then we end up doing this, okay? So you want to have, if it's not comfortable for you to sit up totally straight without the support, put the support there, but use something. Chairs are not designed well. I hate chairs. That's why I sit on a bouncy ball, and why I stand at a desk. But I also understand not everyone has the financial means to be able to buy these sorts of things, and I also understand that not everybody can stand or sit on a bouncy ball. Everyone has different bodies, and this is not to shame you and say that you know, if you can't use these things, there's no hope for you. There's always a workaround. And if you're having struggles with getting a comfortable position at work and you're in a lot of pain, please email me. I'm not a doctor, so I can't give you a diagnosis or like, you know, give you medical advice. I'll say that as a legal disclaimer. But I will try my best to find you a product or prop you up in a way that can help you feel comfortable at your desk. I don't mind doing that. I've done it for hundreds of people over the years. And if you can go to work and not be in pain, you're so much more productive and happy and less likely to experience burnout. So then we're going to talk about our...
Hey, Jen, I have a quick question from the chat that's sort of timely.
Yeah, go for it.
Does the cross torso demo work with TheraBands, or does the resistance in a band make a difference? I think you used a band without stretch when you demonstrated that.
Yeah, I used a cotton one. Yeah, I have used this before in a pinch because I keep it in my office. But the problem is when you pull it up across here, that's a great question, by the way, thank you. This can cut off circulation here. So I don't recommend it. I'll do it in a pinch if I don't have anything else and I'm like at an airport and miserable. But I would rather use some other kind of a woven strap is much better. And the other thing I didn't mention that's on that same vein, when you do that position or when you're doing this, if you get tingling in your fingers, you're not, just so you know, you're not going to die, but you probably have thoracic outlet syndrome. And so you've got a vein that runs from here. It goes down through, so this is your steinocleidomastoid muscle. I don't expect you to remember that. There's no test. So this is your SCM. You can grab it. There's a big meaty muscle right here. It's probably sore if you pull on it. Anyone who gets lots of migraines and headaches, I bet this is really sore. Okay, you want to go get that massaged. And I can show you some cool techniques to help yourself with it later, or you can email me and I'll help you. But there's a vein that runs right down here, right down here, right down here, and all the way into here. Okay, so a lot of people that have carpal tunnel syndrome, it's actually starting up in your neck. People think it's from typing and that exacerbates it, but they also have all kinds of neck issues. So when you're doing that with the strap, and if you start getting tingling in your hands, it means you probably have thoracic outlet syndrome, and it means that you probably have really tight muscles in your neck. You're not gonna die, don't panic. It's not gonna hurt you, you can still do that. I mean, if your fingers turn blue or really like it's sharp shooting pain, stop. But if it's just a little fuzzy feeling, you're fine, but just know you need to work on your neck, that your neck is really, really tight. So on that subject, while we're sitting here talking about ergonomics, I was gonna make my way up to the neck, but let's talk about the neck. So I'm gonna turn sideways. Okay, so what happens when we sit forward like this all day is that we put so much pressure on our neck. So most people, I'm a people watcher and I watch people's posture. And because I'm fascinated by how bad all of our postures is, me too. And so what happens is that we get in the habit of this forward head thrust, okay? Especially if we're playing on phones or video games or typing or reading or whatever. Everything's this forward motion, and that's what I talked about. We don't need to stretch and do any more forward bending. We do that enough, okay? And so one of the life-changing things you can do for yourself is tuck your freaking chin in. Like, we do this all the time, okay? I'm not saying give yourself a double chin. I'm just saying like a little tiny chin tilt, like I said about the pelvic tilt, is just tuck that chin in a little bit, because every inch that your ear is ahead of your shoulders adds 10 pounds of pressure to your neck. Most of you that I observe, I go to conferences and I watch everybody in the crowd and I try to fix my own posture because it's also terrible, is everyone has at least 2 to 3 inches of forward head thrust. So that means you're getting 20 to 30 extra pounds of pressure on your neck every single day. No wonder our upper backs are sore. If you have issues right across here, try tucking this guy in, okay? Don't have to be extreme about it, but just a little chin tilt, okay? And you wanna try and keep this long back here. Okay, that's gonna save you so much pressure and pain. And then go get your neck massaged or do some of the other stuff that I have on handouts for relaxing your neck muscles. Okay, now I got off on a tangent. So getting back to ergonomics for your keyboard. So another thing is you wanna make sure that your arms are at a 90-degree angle. I'm gonna move my webcam so you guys can see. So here's my horribly messy desk. And so I've got my keyboard. But then I also have a rollerball mouse. Okay, so this is an actual roll bar like this. And so I can roll with my thumbs. Now I do also have a regular mouse because, you know, I'm almost 40 years old and I'm really used to using a mouse, and sometimes this just drives me nuts when I'm doing fine detail work. So I have a mouse there to also use that, but I've got this rollerball mouse, and now you can see my arms stay tucked into my sides and at a nice 90-degree angle. So because my desk is adjustable, I can adjust it, and then I keep my hands here, and then I type, and I use my thumbs to roller with the mouse back and forth this way or up and down, okay? And then I don't have to do this, because this is what's really hard on the shoulder carriage and really hard on your wrist. Now, speaking about wrist, if you suffer from carpal tunnel, one thing that's great for your wrist, don't do this, okay? Every physio you go see, I'm gonna turn that so you can see me, will be like, oh, stretch your wrists out. Okay, so I want you to take your arm, and I want you to find these muscles here. So when you're typing, make a typing fingers with your hands, and I want you to feel into your arm, okay? And you'll feel those tendons and muscles right here in your forearm moving. Okay, now I want you to keep your fingers there, keep moving, and then do this, okay? And do this. So when you do this, you'll feel those muscles tighten up, okay? So they get tight when we do this all day, and then we do this to stretch out your wrist. What happens? Oh, it's tighter, okay? So if you have carpal tunnel syndrome and your doctor tells you to do this to stretch out your wrists, please don't. You can feel it. You're just tightening the same muscles that are tight all day from typing. What you want to do is this, okay? I know it looks ridiculous. You look like a bunny rabbit hopping, but okay, you're just gonna do this with your wrist. You're gonna rest it on your desk, preferably like I have a nice comfy pad here, and then you're just gonna flop it inwards. It's not going to hurt, and it shouldn't feel like anything. This feels like absolutely nothing to me right now. So floppy wrist, turn it slightly inward. Now feel that. Should feel like jelly, okay? Now you're slackening off an over tight muscle. You need to hold a slackened muscle for 67 seconds in order for it to relax. That's the science. 67 seconds at least. So set a little timer on your phone, take a little break, a minute and a half at the most, you know, do one arm, do the other arm, okay? Do both arms at the same time. Slacken off those muscles. Don't stretch them. This is just tightening them, okay? You want to chill them out. And so again, nice and tight, 90 degrees. If you can buy yourself a rollerball mouse or a roller bar mouse, roller ball is the ones that have the little balls in them, and you can just use your thumb, or a bar. These are more expensive, but you know, it's worth it to me. And you don't move your hands at all, okay? So that's some desk ergonomics for you. I'm sure I can't see the chat box, but I'm sure you guys have questions. Again, you can always email me or wait for the end, and we'll have a Q&A. So Inreach. Inreach is so important to me. So I teach yoga and meditation at the library. I have been doing that for 10 years, but I also offer it to my staff. So every single time we have a staff meeting or a training day or a professional development day, or we go on conference or anything, I always volunteer to teach yoga. And it's a selfish thing. I want to stretch too. I don't want to sit in meetings all day long. Holy Hannah, like I need to move my body around or I'm cranky too, okay? So if I go to a conference, the first thing I do is go to the conference organizers and I'm like, can I volunteer to teach a 20-minute or 30-minute or half an hour, hour-long yoga session? I can do it at 6 o'clock in the morning even, I don't care. Just let me know if that's an option for you. And most of the conferences I've gone to are like, yay, yes, please. And I will teach a free yoga session for everyone because it's really important when you're sitting all day to take a break. And then I also give my staff full reign to attend any of the classes that I teach on meditation or yoga here at the library. We try to work their schedules around it if we can. And if not, I'm always here in my office. If something's hurting on them, they can come in and talk to me. Now, I realize you don't have a yoga teacher on every staff. You don't have a massage therapist or a, you know, God, if the world would be lovely if we all had such services at work. But educate yourself. If you can't have those services at work, educate yourself on how to take care of your body. Because you know what? If no one is taking care of you, it's really hard to go out into the world and care for other people. You have to take care of yourself and your body first. So let's do a little bit of meditation together. Some of you have never done meditation before and you're probably like, what is this? It's scary. And some of you are like, oh yeah, cool, meditation. So here's what we're gonna do. Meditation is just a form of mindfulness. So remember how we talked earlier and I asked you to just be aware of your surroundings and what was going on? So that's exactly what we're gonna do now, but we're just gonna go a little deeper with it. So what we practiced earlier was mindfulness, and now we're gonna ramp it up to some meditation. Okay, so if you'd like to follow along with me, and you don't have to, it's not boot camp, I'm not gonna yell at you if you don't do it. We're gonna sit in our chairs if you're sitting, or if you're sitting cross-legged, you can do that, or if you're standing, you can do that. You can do meditation anywhere, maybe not while driving, but you can be mindful while you're driving. So we're gonna sit up nice and tall, our feet are flat on the floor, our hands are in our lap, and if you're wearing your librarian specs, just take those off, okay? And I want you to just close your eyes. And I want you to take one hand, doesn't matter which, and put it on your belly. Now notice if you had any judgments about your belly when you put your hand there. That happens, that's okay, there's no shame. Just acknowledge that. Hi, belly. And then I want you to pay attention to your breath now. I want you to notice if you're breathing in your chest or if you're breathing in your belly. So as you're breathing, can you feel your belly move? This is some interoception we're doing here. Is your belly moving back and forth, or is it just your shoulders going up and down? So what I want you to do is see if you can drop your breath down into your belly. So as you inhale, take a big inhale, I want your hand to go out. I want it to like expand, like your belly's going out. And as you exhale, I want you to pull your belly button in. Might not be the way you normally breathe. Inhale, belly goes out. Exhale, belly comes in. Relax your jaw. Inhale, belly goes out. Exhale, belly comes in. And as I talk, I want you to just keep doing this breathing with me. So what happens when we drop our breath down like this is it turns on our rest and digest cycle. So you have 5 lobes in your lungs, 2 on your left side to make room for your heart, and 3 on your right side. But we in North America tend to only breathe in the top part of our chest most of the time, except when we're sleeping. Sometimes we reset when we're sleeping. So if you watch a person sleeping, which is kind of creepy, but if you have a partner and you watch them sleep, or a dog or a child next to you, you'll notice their bellies go up and down while they sleep. And that's your body's natural way of breathing. You use all 5 lobes of your lungs, and you use that diaphragm, and your belly's supposed to pop out a little bit when you breathe. We're taught in North America that we have to suck our stomachs in all the time, and that we have to puff out our chests. So when I talked earlier about that anterior posterior tilt, I said to just pull your pelvis in a little bit. But remember I said don't suck your stomach in? I want you to still breathe with your belly while keeping your pelvis tilted a little bit forward. It's a lot to think about, and I don't expect you to get it all today. It's a lifetime of habit changing. But if you watch little kids, when they run around and they're playing, those little Buddha bellies are hanging out, and that's the way you're supposed to breathe. Okay? So inhale, belly goes up. Exhale, belly pulls in. And so when we breathe really shallowly in the top part of our chest, it turns on our fight or flight or freeze hormones. So we get flooded with cortisol and adrenaline and all that stuff. And when you're in that state all the time, because your body thinks, you know, you're being chased by a polar bear, it doesn't know that you're just waiting in line at the grocery store. You get adrenal fatigue, and you get tired, and chronic pain issues and depression and anxiety and all kinds of stuff because you're not getting enough oxygen. Your poor body is so depleted, and you're getting overrun with all of those fight or flight hormones. So when we drop our breath down into our bodies, our bellies like this, okay, it turns on your rest and digest cycle. So you get dopamine and oxytocin. That's the cuddly hormone that you get when you breastfeed as well. It's so good for your body. So inhale, belly goes out. And exhale, belly comes in. And if you want to take your hand away from your belly and just try it without the hand, you can do that too. Or if you're a touchy-feely kind of person, you can even put your other hand on your heart. Inhale, belly goes out. Exhale, belly comes in. We're just going to breathe like this for a few more moments in silence. And then I'm going to ring the bell and bring us out. I don't know if you guys could hear that, but I was just ringing a bell. So I want you to take your hands out in front of you and rub your hands together and get them nice and warm. Get them nice and warm. If you didn't take your glasses off, now's a good time to take those guys off. Warm up your hands, and I want you to take your hands onto your face and give yourself a nice little gentle rub. And slowly open your eyes. Come back to reality. There. So we just had like a little 5 minutes of meditation, but just notice how you're feeling right now. Notice if you've calmed down a little bit, or maybe everything seems brighter or sharper. Just notice how you're feeling in your body. And so meditation isn't a scary thing. In fact, the Zen Buddhists say that the reason that nobody does it is because it's so easy. Right? It's the ebb and flow of coming into and out of awareness. It's not clearing your mind. Okay, people think meditation is just not thinking. No, your brain is designed to think, just like your lungs are designed to breathe, your heart's designed to beat, your brain is designed to think. That's what it does. It scans the horizon looking for danger and problems and things to solve. That's what it's supposed to do. But when you focus on your breath, your mind does eventually calm down because it feels safe. You put yourself into a safe place, okay? And it doesn't have that, there's a polar bear coming sort of sensation. And it gives you a chance to sort of take a little mini vacation, even if it's just in your office for 5 minutes. So then quickly, I know we're running out of time, I'm going to talk a bit about yoga, because yoga, people think yoga is like you have to look like a model on the cover of, Yoga Journal magazine, or like one of those super bendy people on Instagram, and you don't. Anybody with a body can do yoga. And so yoga is just a moving form of that meditation. So it's just doing exactly what we just did, breathing down into the belly, but it's doing it while also moving at the same time. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of yoga together, and I just brought a slide up here for you guys. I used to teach a weekly yoga class when I was at the York Library region. I ran the bookmobile service, so I wasn't getting to teach yoga in a library because I was out in a bookmobile. And so what I was doing is teaching to the staff once a week on their break. We just took a 15-minute break and we would do yoga. And I want you to just look at these numbers. After about 8 months of doing it, I just put a little anonymous survey out to the staff. 100% of them felt more focused when they returned to their desk after just 15 minutes of yoga once a week. That's it. That's all they were doing, 15 minutes once a week. They felt 100% more focused afterwards. They felt more connected, more grounded, they had more energy, and they even felt more mindful, some of them. And by more connected, what they meant, because I asked them to also explain their answers, like if they wanted to in a written component, and they said they felt more connected to each other. When they had this kind of opportunity to practice together and also suffer together and kind of joke and laugh about, I can't reach my arm back here, I feel really tired today. They connected with each other in a way that they didn't get a chance to when they were just sitting around the break room drinking coffee, because they all accepted they all had bodies, and all of their bodies had flaws and issues, and all of their bodies had things to celebrate, and they shared that. So I have a webinar, there's a link to YouTube there. I have multiple videos, we'll talk about that later, of things that you can do with your staff, and I have handouts you can give your staff. It's all free. Feel free to share as much as possible. But let's do a little bit together, and I'm going to teach you something that you can do with your staff or yourself. So everybody's sitting on their chairs, okay? So I'm going to teach you the 6 essential movements of the spine, okay? So here we are sitting on our chairs, bouncy or otherwise. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take your arms overhead if you have the ability. If you don't, that's okay. You can keep your arms down and you can still do these moves with us. So I'm just going to lift my webinar camera so you guys can see my hands. So you're going to take your hands, like you're going to make like a Charlie's Angels gun, okay? or a steeple or whatever you want to call it. I hate gun references, but this, okay? If you can't lift your arms over your head for whatever reason, you don't have to, okay? So you can still do it. So we're just gonna put our hands up for those that can. So you take a nice big inhale through the belly, and then exhale, just turn to one side. Doesn't matter which side. Inhale back to center. Exhale, turn the other way. Inhale back to center. Exhale, lean to one side. Inhale back up. Exhale, lean to the other side. Inhale back up. Now be careful of your low back. We're just gonna do a little bit. Lean back just a wee bit, not too far. Come back up. And then we're gonna go all the way forward. Don't whack your head on your desk, okay? I'm gonna turn sideways so I don't whack my head on my desk. I'm gonna come all the way forward and put my head and my torso on my lap. Okay, and then you're gonna slowly start rolling back up like a robot, rebooting. Roll back up and roll your shoulders back. Never forward, they go forward enough. Roll your shoulders back, okay? So that's 6 essential movements of the spine. So you moved your spine this way, you moved your spine this way, and you moved your spine this way. So your spinal column, you've got a cerebral spinal sheath, a dura, and it has cerebral spinal fluid that runs through it. And has all these little nerve endings that go along in between the vertebrae. And if you don't stimulate those during the day, what happens is that they don't know that they need to move. And so they get sort of fixed in this position. So you want to keep that spinal fluid moving all the time. And we don't. We forward bend. We might reach sideways once in a while to grab something. But other than that, and maybe look behind us. But you know what happens if you don't do that very often and then you do it? Oh, my back, right? So you want to go side to side this way, side to side this way. I'm going fast. Don't do it this fast. And back and forth, okay? And you know what the best thing is you can sneak that into meetings. So even if you don't have a director or an administration that's on board with you being super stretchy and fit at work, you can sneak it in. So what I do is I'll be sitting in not that we ever have boring meetings in library services, but let's say I'm in an incredibly engaging meeting, but I still need to stretch out. And so I will just look behind me at the person sitting beside me or behind me, and just kind of look around the room. Take a nice breath, look the other way. And then, oh, I dropped my pencil, and lean this way. And then take a breath, wait a few minutes. Oh, I've got to scratch my ankle, and lean that way. And then, oh, those ceiling tiles, aren't they fascinating? And look up. And then, oh, I need to tie my shoe or fix my sock, and lean forward. Ta-da! You've got your 6 essential movements in. Nobody's the wiser, and you took care of your body. Okay. So I know we gotta wrap things up, but I want to talk as well, and we can talk about this more at the Q&A at the end, or you guys can send me emails because I know some of this is like a personal nature, but I want to talk about hard things because we don't talk enough about hard things in libraries. Or if we do, it's kind of like we get so fed up and then we just like rant about it, and then it's too late because we're already really revved up and we're reactionary and we're not at a place where we can problem solve. So I want you to think about in your own life and in your own environment how some of these things are contributing to your well-being or lack thereof at work. So maybe it's interpersonal issues that you're having at the office. Maybe you butt heads with somebody. Maybe it's your supervisor. Maybe it's your staff. Maybe it's your coworkers. Maybe it's the delivery guy or the janitor or whoever. But think about some interpersonal issues at work and how those may be affecting how you feel about your job. Because sometimes we wake up in the morning and we're like, oh, I don't want to go to work today. And you feel so heavy and depressed or so anxious, or you're late all the time, or you're a perfectionist, you're procrastinating. And sometimes there's a reason behind why we're doing those. Maybe it's because we have a meeting with somebody we really don't like today and they make us really anxious. And instead, we're like self-sabotaging and making ourselves late for work. But really, it's because we're just avoiding anything to do with work and that person. And so being aware of how what's going on in your environment at work can really affect how you feel about yourself. Okay, and then those are conversations to have with your supervisor or with a therapist. If you're lucky enough at work, like here, we have employee benefits, so my staff can go, and I always give them as much time as possible that they need to go talk to free therapy sessions, as well as I give them as much sick time as they need mental health days as well. They don't need to specify. They just need to say, I'm not coming in today. And I'm like, see ya, I'll schedule someone to replace you. Okay. But not everybody works in an environment like that or has a boss like me. And I understand that. And believe me, I get flack for it sometimes from the larger system. But you know, I try to work from a place of compassion, and I know, and people will sometimes try to take advantage of it. And then I have to have those hard conversations too. But I want you to think about how stresses at work are impacting your well-being. And then I want you to also think about how interpersonal issues at home are impacting your well-being at work, because there's nothing worse than like having all of this going on in your brain, and then you've got to try and complete some like Excel spreadsheet and you can't focus because all you can think about is a fight you have with your spouse, or your kids getting bullied at school, or your mom's dying, or whatever, or maybe all three of those things are happening at once. And again, this is where you need to be really honest if you are in a working environment where you can be honest, and talk to your supervisor, talk to your colleagues. And you don't need to disclose all your personal information, but you can say, I'm having a really hard time at home right now, and my work may not be up to standard at the moment, and I need to set up some boundaries for myself and take care of myself, because if not, this is going to get worse. And I value my job, and I value you and your time, and I want to make sure that I can contribute as much as I can to my capacity at the moment. And it's because I care that I'm telling you this. Now, I know not everybody works in a super compassionate environment and have struggles with that. And if you want to reach out to me, I can try to help coach you through some of that if you need to have those hard conversations. Mental health struggles. If you are dealing with some mental health stuff and you may or may not feel comfortable disclosing that to your employer, that can really affect how things are going at work. Something that we need to talk about as well is climate anxiety and pandemic news articles and natural disasters. And we're seeing this more and more in libraries with our patrons, with kids, and how everything that's going on in the news and everything that's happening in the world today is radically affecting how we work, not just because it's affecting our patrons and we get the fallout from that, but it's also affecting ourselves. And so again, bringing that awareness and mindfulness to how is this affecting our work environment and how we feel at work. Then there's physical illness and disability. Maybe you have chronic pain and that's making it really hard for you to come in and get to work on time or sit all day because you're uncomfortable and in pain, and you don't feel like you're allowed to disclose that, or you feel like people will think that you're just whining, and that takes a huge mental toll on you. And then financial worries, that's another thing. If you're worried you're going to lose your job, you're worried you can't pay your bills, you know, all sorts of things like that, that really affects how you're interacting in your work environment and how you're doing your job. And then also caregiving responsibilities. You know, I try to be really compassionate with my staff if they have to leave work to go pick up their kids or go to a baseball game or do whatever. And I try to schedule vacations so that people that have children or elderly parents, that they have things they need to do with, or other people they're caring for, that they can have as much time as they need with them, because our lives are bigger than just our jobs, right? Our jobs can be really important to us, but they're not all of you, and they're not who you are. They're just one component of what you do. And so I also have compassion and understand that caregiving responsibilities can take a huge toll on how you do your work. And so I want you to just think about all of those things that may be impacting how you're feeling at work, and to give yourself some compassion for it, as well as thinking about how they may affect other people. Maybe there's a person at work that you have a really hard time getting along with, but you may not be aware of everything that's going on in their life. And they may have all sorts of things that are contributing to why they're super cranky at work, or why they're really uptight or whatever. Again, we don't have time to get into all of the possible complex issues that can be affecting your work environment, but I know that there's a lot of them. And I know you guys are overworked and underpaid and overwhelmed, and you're my people, and I understand that. And I'm listening to you, and I care, and Bobby cares, and there's a whole lot of us librarians out there that really care, and we're trying to provide as many resources as possible. So that said, here's some resources for you. I have created all sorts of free resources. So this is a poster called Taking Care of Us. I'm sorry my face is on it. I make these for the government. And, you know, when you say, hey, you want a model for me for a poster, there's going to be like 100,000 of them printed. People are like, I'm good, thanks. So you get stuck with me, sorry. But here's some really good little suggestions of how you can take care of yourself at work and at home. And you can take that and you can photocopy it. These are all free on my website. I have an agreement with all my publishers before I write any books or do anything that I can share my infographics and resources for free, because I understand that not everyone can afford like a $60 textbook. And I want people to be able to share them, because my goal in life is to help people feel good in their bodies, not to, you know, make them poor. And I'm a librarian too. I work on a librarian salary. I get it. And then I also have another one here. This one's, I have it, it's in, all of these, most of them are translated into French as well. So if you have French speaking people in your libraries, or you're a French speaker yourself, you can get those on the website too. So this is De-Stress at Your Desk. And this is some of the little exercises that I just showed you right now. These are on here. And so you can hang that up in your break room, or you can put it in your office or take it home, and those are some ones that you can do. For those of you that are interested in teaching yoga in libraries, or already yoga teachers, I have a whole series of free yoga classes. So this is gentle yoga. You could do this with just about anybody. And for those that can't get on the floor, I also have one that's chair yoga as well. And again, these are all free on the website. And you guys can see, I think, in there, oh, and then there's yoga for heartache, because sometimes we're really struggling emotionally, and just doing anything physical feels so overwhelming. So this is a class that's designed for those that are really struggling with stuff emotionally. And I teach it a lot to women that have experienced trauma, or anyone that's experienced trauma. I take it into the First Nation communities here in Canada. Anyone who's following the news knows that our First Nations are struggling with a lot of stuff. And most of it no fault of their own. And so this is something I really reach out to them with as well. And then these are two of the books that I've written. I'm working on another book right now for Roman and Littlefield that's all about adult programming in libraries, and how we can work on whole person literacy in libraries and increase a number of different ways of reaching out to people, including ourselves. But these are the two that I have out right now. Hopefully you have at least one copy in your library system and you can borrow them. I think the yoga and meditation at the library is also available digitally. The Get Your Community Moving is not, I don't believe, but I think the other one is also available in an ebook. And then I have a website that's full of, everything's free on there. It's full of, handouts and posters and webinars and videos and links to other people's stuff that they're doing that I think is amazing. And just, you know, check it out, and let me know if there's anything that's not up there that you would like to see up there. There's even links to liability waivers if you want to run physical literacy programs in your library. And then, of course, I created years ago yogainthelibrary.com, and that's just specifically for yoga and meditation related stuff. And then I also have physical literacy in the library.com, which is just for like sports or more physical related things. I have tons of reviews of books up there, of books that you can add movement to story times for kids. So if you're looking for a book that incorporates some movement, I have tons of reviews over there. You guys should be able to see me in the little square box. So I also brought some other people's books. One I don't have on my desk, but desk bound, Standing Up to a Sitting World by Kelly Starrett. That's an amazing book if you're interested in having a standing desk, or interested in standing more and sitting less. I don't advocate for all day standing. As you can see, I'm sitting right now, because I think doing anything static for a long period of time is bad for you. So I have my desk that goes up and down so I can change positions. I also have another workstation that I just sit at that has a regular office chair. And then I try to get up and move and do breaks. And in Kelly's book, he has a lot of exercises you can do with foam rollers or little balls like this, or TerraBands. And another good book that has lots of things like that is called The Role Model by Jill Miller. This is our library copy here, and she talks a lot about how to stretch out at little things you can do at your desk with balls like this, like putting it into your pec minor, right? And just sitting there and putting some pressure on that trigger point to relax it. Two meditation books that I love. This one is called Making Space, Creating a Home Meditation Practice by Thich Nhat Hanh. And it's tiny, tiny. I give it out when I teach meditation. You should be able to get it for like $6 or $7. And it's all about bringing meditation into your life in the smallest and simplest ways. And then I love this book called Be Mindful and Stress Less. And it's written for teens, You wouldn't know it by looking at it, but it is kind of written for a young adult audience, but it is great for like teens and 20-somethings, but anybody can read it. I love it too, and like I said, I'm almost 40, so that's a really good one. It has lots of good little exercises in it for mindfulness, but there's so many, and I've reviewed a lot of them on my websites. The yogainthelibrary.com has tons of, if you look under print resources, there's tons and tons of book reviews. That's one of the main things that I do, is review books. And it's because not all of them are great, and I'm honest, I will say if it's a crappy book. And that's it. If you guys have any questions, I know I crammed a lot into an hour, but if you have any questions, you can always find me on social media, or you can email me, or you can ask me questions right now if Bobby says we have enough time. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to see if I can try and see the chat box.
Yeah, so we're about 6 minutes over, so we went a little long, and so if you have somewhere you have to be, of course, feel free to step away. But yeah, I think we can go ahead and just stay on the webinar and let some people ask some questions, or I can read some questions to you. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box for Jen. And of course, remember that all of our webinars are recorded, so you'll be able to view this later on YouTube if you do have to step away. Jen, this was great. I participated. You couldn't see me, but
no, I couldn't. Yay!
So yeah. So the first question I see is, can you put those titles, or are those book titles somewhere that you recommend? Oops,
you're in the dark. Yes, so almost all of those books, I think all of those books are either reviewed in my book or on my websites. So absolutely, you can look on the websites under resources, there's reviews there, or you can look in my books, and I have lots of bibliographies and book reviews, lots of resources, because I love reading books about mindfulness and meditation and yoga and self-care and all that stuff, and so I try to do them. And I noticed somebody was asking about recommendations for larger bodies. Every kind of yoga that I teach is designed for any kind of body, with all sorts of modifications. So there are a few good books on the market that are specifically for people with larger bodies, but my feeling on that matter is that it doesn't matter. You know, like, yes, you know, if you take up a little bit more space in the world, just because of how you're shaped, there are certain things that you're going to need to modify. But I don't know, dividing us into, like, where do you draw that line? How do you say, like, oh, I'm a big person and I have to do big person yoga, versus I'm a little person, I have to do little person yoga? I struggle with that as both a person and a teacher. Because I just see bodies, and I just see bodies that have misalignments that need to be fixed and helped so people aren't in pain. But the packaging, or I guess the padding, maybe for lack of a better word, that's on top of that bone structure, any good yoga teacher won't care about that. Like the padding on top of the bone structure, it doesn't matter. It's the bone structure and the alignment of the bones and the muscles that we care about. And so finding a really good yoga teacher is what matters. And I understand that people may feel self-conscious going into like a yoga class and everybody's covered, you know, in like tiny little like booty shorts and stuff. I get that. Like, that's you know, there is a whole world of yoga that's all about aesthetics, but I try to stay away from that world of yoga, and I don't teach like that. So I would recommend finding a yoga teacher who cares about your body and how it works and functions. Someone who is more medical or anatomy based and less aesthetic based. Never compromise the integrity of the posture you're doing to make it look a certain way. Care about the integrity of how your body feels. How you look is really superfluous, if that helps. And I see, yeah, someone said teachers won't care, but students do. I get that. I understand. I'm not a large person, but I also struggle with body image issues. And I understand that you may feel uncomfortable being in a class with people who aren't the same size as you, or are able-bodied if you're not able-bodied. And the best thing is for me to try and seek out classes where you feel comfortable, and you may have to just try them to find out.
Let's see, I'm trying to scroll back for actual questions for you. Jen, somebody asked about your email. I believe that's on your website.
Yeah, librarianjencarson@gmail.com. I can just type it in here.
And I will say, when I send out the recording, I'll include the links to your website and all that stuff again.
Yeah.
So I'll have that.
Yeah, and I love getting emails from people. I might not answer you right away because I get a lot. I get probably 400 emails a day sometimes. So, if I take 2 or 3 days to get back to you, don't take it personally. It's just because I'm really good at setting boundaries. I've had to because I'm a people pleaser, and I'm helpful. And so I have to be like, nope, it's the weekend and I'm spending it with my kids, and I'll call you or get back to you on Monday or Tuesday or whatever it is. So don't take it personally if you don't hear from me for a day or two, but I care and I want your questions for sure. Yes, the handouts that were mentioned, they are on the website, jencarson.com. They're also in all of the books as well. And they're all free. There's no they're copyrighted in the sense that they first appeared in the book. If you're using them in a presentation, I would appreciate it if you gave me a little shout out or the publisher a little shout out. But there's no copyright infringement if you photocopy them and share them with people. I have waived full rights of that because I care more about people using them. There's no charge for them whatsoever.
And I saw a question earlier in the chat, Jen. Somebody asked about weighted blankets, if you have had any experience with those.
Yeah. So I have a beanbag right here on my desk, and when I lay on the floor, I put the beanbag on my belly, and that helps me with the breathing. And that's what I do with my students as well. I have them this one's shaped like a heart. How cute. And so they put it on their belly, and that helps with the feeling of the pressure. But weighted blankets are great for that as well, especially if you have sensory issues. I fall on the spectrum myself for some things, and I'm a high tactile person. I like a lot of sensation, and other people are the exact opposite. They don't like anything touching their skin. They don't like tags. They don't want blankets. They don't want beanbags. So when you're teaching or you're doing it yourself, that's where that interoception and self-knowledge comes in of, are you the kind of person that feels comfortable with weight on your chest, or does that make you feel panicky and uncomfortable? And so that will be different for everybody.
Okay, it looks like that was the last question I saw, and you're getting a lot of thank yous and
thank you so much
in the chat box. So
I'll have to read those after.
All right, I am going to go ahead and stop recording. Thank you, everyone, for. Oops, wait, I actually wanted to share my screen one more time, and I know most people have logged off. If you're not familiar with us, do consider signing up for more webinars and follow us on Twitter. But I also wanted to recommend a class that I offer here at the National Network of Libraries of Medicine that's free for everyone to take, called Wellness in the Library Workplace, which actually covers a lot of what Jen has covered today, and just provides some more information and guides, especially if you're trying to take it back to your boss and get some changes made at work.
And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't take it just because you listened to this today, because Bobby's seminars are awesome. I fully endorse them.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the National Network of Libraries of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel. Select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.